I want you to do something for me right now. Think about the last time a complete stranger, not someone doing their job, not someone being politely professional, treated you like you genuinely, specifically mattered. A real person who looked at you with actual warmth and made you feel like your presence in the room was something worth having, not just something to be managed. If you are struggling to think of a recent example from your life in America, I am not surprised, and I am not saying that to be cruel. I am saying it because I think you already know exactly what I mean, and because I think you have been quietly waiting for someone with real knowledge to acknowledge it out loud. The West does something devastating to its older men. It teaches them to disappear gracefully and be grateful that nobody is asking them to move faster. I'm Amara. I grew up in the Philippine province, moved to Cebu City at 18, and spent years working alongside foreign men and watching what happens to them when they arrive here, the beautiful parts and the dangerous parts. Today, I'm going to tell you something your own country never had the grace to say. A 65-year-old man in the Philippines is not invisible. He is something else entirely, but you need to understand exactly why and where the danger is hiding inside that welcome, or you will hand over everything to the wrong person before you realize what happened. Subscribe now. I give these truths to protect you, not just to impress you. Let me paint you a picture of what a typical week looks like for a 65-year-old man in a mid-sized American city, because I think if I say it clearly, you are going to recognize it immediately and feel something you have not let yourself fully acknowledge in a long time. He wakes up alone in most cases. He makes his coffee. He goes to the grocery store and the person at the checkout does not make eye contact. Not out of deliberate rudeness, but because he has simply ceased to register as someone worth a real look. He goes to a restaurant alone, and the hostess seats him at the table nobody particularly wants, near the kitchen noise or beside a drafty door. He sits in a work meeting, and his suggestion is politely received and quietly set aside in favor of something nearly identical, said with more energy by someone 20 years younger and with 2 years of actual experience. He attends a social gathering, and the women he speaks to are cordial in the specific and hollow way people are cordial to someone they feel a mixture of vague pity and complete indifference toward. He has earned money. He has accumulated experience that cost him genuinely significant things. He has developed wisdom through decades of living through actual circumstances that cannot be studied or shortcut, and not a single one of these assets seems to carry much weight in the rooms he moves through. I am not inventing this portrait for drama. American men tell me versions of this same story constantly, and the thread running through every single one of them is not bitterness. It is genuine bewilderment. A quiet, sincere confusion about the exact moment they became background noise. When the shift happened from someone whose perspective was sought and valued to someone whose presence is politely tolerated until a graceful exit becomes possible. The Western cultural narrative around aging men is devastating in a specific, quiet way. It does not announce itself. It does not reject you noisily. It simply, methodically, without ceremony, stops seeing you, and then expects you to interpret that as the natural order of things and adjust accordingly. To need less, to want less, to accept a smaller and quieter version of your life, and frame that acceptance as wisdom rather than defeat. And then something happens. A conversation, a video, a forum thread somewhere late at night, and you hear about the Philippines as a real place, a real possibility, and not just an abstraction. And something you had carefully buried a long time ago quietly wakes up and asks a question you are not yet sure you are allowed to answer out loud. You land in Cebu or Manila or Davao, and something shifts in the first 24 hours that you cannot immediately put into language. The woman at the airport information desk smiles at you, not the professional, policy-required smile you have been receiving for years, but a real, personal, you-specifically smile with her eyes fully engaged. The man at the front desk of your hotel addresses you as "Sir," with a tone that carries actual weight, rather than the hollow performance of a customer service script applied identically to everyone. You walk into a small restaurant near your hotel, and the server does not look through you. She looks at you directly, engages you, asks about your preferences with what registers as genuine curiosity, and when you answer, she responds like someone who was actually listening to the answer, rather than waiting for it to end. You are sitting outside at a small table in the warm evening air, watching the street life go past, and two young women at the table beside you catch your eye and hold the contact for a real moment before smiling, and neither of them looks immediately away, as though the eye contact was an embarrassment. And something in you that has been very, very quiet starts making noise again. You cannot quite identify what you are feeling at first, because you have not felt it in long enough that you had almost convinced yourself it was simply gone forever. You feel seen. You feel like a person who occupies actual, real space in the world rather than empty space that others navigate politely around. And I want to be the first one to tell you, clearly and directly, this feeling is not an accident, and it is not entirely fabricated. There is something genuinely real underneath it. But I also need to be the person who tells you, before anything else, that this genuine cultural warmth exists alongside a very well-developed set of approaches specifically designed for men who arrive feeling exactly what you are feeling right now. And you will not be able to tell the two apart without understanding what is actually underneath both of them. Filipino culture genuinely elevates its elders. This is not nostalgia pretending to still be alive. The language itself reflects it. The honorifics po and opo, used when speaking to older people, are not just good manners. They encode an entire worldview about age and worth into the grammar of daily conversation. An older man here occupies a social position that comes with real deference, real listening, and real acknowledgement that is not contingent on his productivity or his physical condition. You are not merely tolerated as you age in this culture. You are, in a real and active sense, elevated. And for a man who spent years being quietly made to feel like a liability, that elevation does something to the chest that is genuinely difficult to put into words. Now I need to translate this completely and honestly, because this is exactly the point where men walk into serious and sometimes irreversible trouble. The warmth you receive here is genuine in some cases and a very sophisticated performance in others, and the tragedy is that from inside the feeling of finally being seen after years of being invisible, both feel absolutely identical. You cannot distinguish the real from the performance purely by how it makes you feel, because the performance was specifically designed and refined to produce exactly this feeling in exactly a man in your emotional condition. Let me explain the two layers that exist simultaneously. The first layer, the genuine cultural respect for older men, is absolutely real, and you will encounter it everywhere, from shopkeepers and jeepney drivers, from hotel staff, from families who invite you to share a meal, from the older generation especially. This respect is not targeted at foreign men specifically. It is simply how the culture functions. An older Filipino man in his own community receives a dignity and acknowledgement that his American counterpart has not experienced in a very long time. You are receiving the authentic version of this truth when you feel it from these ordinary daily interactions, and none of it is a lie. The second layer, however, is a different thing, and it operates on top of the first and borrows its entire vocabulary. In certain environments, entertainment areas, specific online dating spaces, social circles that have formed specifically around interaction with foreign men, a subset of younger women have learned with remarkable precision how to take the language of genuine Filipino warmth and amplify it dramatically for foreign consumption. They produce something that functions like a curated, intensified, personally targeted version of the cultural respect you are already receiving everywhere else, but concentrated, intimate, and aimed specifically at you and the particular emotional hunger you arrived carrying. The local Filipino man receives genuine cultural respect. You are being offered something that looks and feels much more like devoted personal adoration. And the operational difference between those two things, if you cannot identify it in real time, is worth your retirement savings, your health, and years of the life you have remaining. The woman who genuinely respects you and is genuinely drawn to who you are will be consistent whether your wallet is open or whether you are having a financially careful week. She treats you the same on a quiet weekday afternoon when there is nothing happening as she does at a restaurant on a Friday evening when you are feeling generous. She is warm when there is nothing immediate to gain from the warmth. The woman whose warmth is calibrated to financial access is perfectly consistent only in her performance schedule, close and focused when proximity to you means proximity to resources, and noticeably cooler or more distracted when that calculation changes. So here is the practical question. How do you keep the crown and still protect your savings, your dignity, and the genuine joy that this place is entirely capable of giving you? I give you this plainly because soft advice in situations like this has cost too many good men everything. First, understand that being received here like a man of genuine worth is partly a real cultural gift and partly a targeted product designed for exactly the emotional condition you arrive in, and your responsibility is to receive the gift while identifying and declining the product. You do this not by treating every warm interaction with suspicion. That would poison everything beautiful and real about your time here, but by watching consistency over time rather than intensity in any single beautiful moment. Real warmth is steady and reliable across different circumstances. It does not spike dramatically when your financial availability is visible and flatten when it is not. It is present on a difficult Tuesday and a good Saturday. It is there when you have nothing particular to offer that specific week. Second, resist the very powerful and very understandable desire to immediately compensate the warmth you receive with money. I know why this happens, and I have real compassion for it. You have been starved of being genuinely seen for long enough that when someone finally sees you, really sees you, responds to you as a specific person, your instinct is to secure that feeling by whatever means are immediately available, and money is the most available tool you have. You want to give generously because it feels like the natural response to something real. But generosity offered too quickly, before genuine trust and genuine character have been demonstrated across real time and real circumstances, is not a love language in this context. It is a positioning signal. It tells a particular kind of woman exactly what category of man she is dealing with, and exactly how to manage him from that point forward. Be kind, be warm, be generous in ways that are thoughtful and personal, but do not hand over financial access to someone whose character you have known for 3 weeks. Third, embrace what you actually have here for what it genuinely is, without inflating it into a fantasy that will eventually cost you the real thing. The elevation you feel in this country is real. The warmth of the culture is real. the genuine possibility of a connection with a woman who values your experience, your steadiness, your history, and the specific kind of man that your particular life has made you, that possibility is absolutely real, and it exists here for you. But you are not a king simply because you arrived from America with a retirement income. You become the real version of a king, the version that actually means something, when you carry yourself like one, when you hold your boundaries firmly, when you require honesty from the beginning rather than discovering it is absent 3 months in, when you choose slowly and deliberately rather than desperately, when you refuse to purchase the experience of being appreciated. A real king does not buy loyalty. He inspires it by being who he is, consistently, across real conditions and real time. The moment you become that man in your actual behavior, the moment you stop using your finances to compensate for the emotional deficit you arrived carrying, the genuine women here will recognize something in you worth choosing, and the performers will move on quietly to someone who has not yet figured this out. That single distinction, held firmly and without apology, is worth more than any other piece of advice I can give you. This country can genuinely give you back a version of yourself you had long accepted as gone. Protect it fiercely once you have it. You came all this way for something real. Make sure you leave with it.